IELTS Listening, version 54165. You will hear a number of different recordings and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 sections. Write all your answers in the listening question booklet. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet. Now turn to Section 1 on page 2 of your question booklet. Section 1. You will hear a woman talking on the phone to a car salesman about some second-hand cars he has for sale. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5 on page 2. You will see that there is an example that has been done for you. On this occasion only, the conversation relating to this will be played first.
Hello, I heard your advert on the radio about the sale you're having, and I wanted to find out about your cars.
Well, you've called the right place. So, how much do you want to spend?
I'd like to spend about $4,000, but definitely no more than $4,300.
The maximum the woman would like to spend is $4,300, so $4,300 has been written in the space. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Hello, I heard your advert on the radio about the sale you're having, and I wanted to find out about your cars.
Well, you've called the right place. So, how much do you want to spend?
I'd like to spend about $4,000, but definitely no more than $4,300.
OK. For that price, we've got some nice cars. I've got a lovely Noda. Do you know that model?
Yes. What colour is it? I know it sounds unimportant, but there are certain colours I don't want.
Well, this one is silver.
That's good, because I don't want a dark colour, like black, as they get too hot in summer. So is it in good condition?
It's just had a state-of-the-art stereo put in, and although one light is damaged, we'd repair that for you if you decided to buy it.
Oh, that's good of you.
I've also got a Camina. It's a white one. It's slightly more expensive than the Noda, but it's a good car. I know it quite well because it was owned by our manager here, so I used to get to drive it quite a bit.
The Camina is okay, but it's a little on the big side.
Well, how about a Telstar? They're smaller, but not too small. We've got an orange one of those. Actually, what kind of model were you after? This one's an automatic.
Great. They are so much easier to drive than the manual model, although I'm fine with either.
And another good feature is that the previous owner only replaced its tyres last month.
That will save some money, and anything to do with the wheels is so important for safety. It might be worth a look.
OK. Now, let's look at what else we've got in your price range. How about an Abrada? It's a red one. It's the newest of the cars for sale in your bracket.
How old is it? I doubt I could afford anything less than 10 years old.
Well, you might be surprised. There was only one previous owner and they had it 8 years. All the others are at least 9 years old.
Now that's a possibility.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10 on page 2. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
OK, well, I'm interested in a couple of those. Could I come and take a look at them?
Sure. We're open 7 days a week. Do you know where we are?
I think so. You're on Station Road in Mitchell, right? I usually go past your place when I'm on the bus.
That's right. You can't miss us. What day would suit you? Don't leave it too long, as these cars are likely to go quickly at these prices.
Well, I couldn't get there before Wednesday, and even that might be pushing it. How does Thursday sound?
Sounds good. I usually don't work then or Fridays, but I am this week.
That's good. I'd prefer to deal with you. OK, so would 9:30 in the morning be OK?
No worries. When you arrive, ask for Gerald Smith. That's Gerald.
OK.
Now, will you be coming by car or public transport?
I'll probably come with my dad in his car. He knows all about this sort of thing.
Well, you should be able to park at the supermarket. Parking can be a bit hard with all the businesses around here and all our cars out the front.
Great. Now, is there anything I need to bring with me?
Let me think. If you want to take the car for a test drive, you'll need to have identification with you. I mean, otherwise you could just drive off in it and never come back.
OK, that's easy.
Perfect. See you later this week.
That is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 2 on page 3. Section 2. You will hear the chairperson of the Middletown Urban Farming Scheme talking to a group of people who are interested in joining the scheme. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 16 on page 3. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 16.
I'm Chris Butler, and I'm the chairperson of the Middletown Urban Farming Scheme, or MUFS for short, a highly successful program which encourages city dwellers to grow their own fruit and vegetables, to become city farmers, if you will. Who started MUFS? Well, the idea of urban farming has been around for quite a while, particularly among town planners. But it was actually a group of Middletown business people, including myself, who decided to create what became MUFS. University agriculture specialists got involved later. Now, initially, the aim was not some eco-friendly goal of reducing CO2 emissions caused by the transport of food from farm to dinner plate. It was simply to maximize the utilization of the vacant or idle land that lies within the city. Of course, later we realized that an additional benefit might be a healthier diet for local people. Let me tell you a bit about the groups that have joined the scheme. We've got any number of schools involved and loads of corporate employees, so our message seems to have been well received there. But for next year, we're going to concentrate on getting various community centers, like those for senior citizens, to join, because so far they've been somewhat slow to take up the scheme. Now, the core committee of the MUFS is a group of dedicated gardeners. They probably won't be familiar with your specific plot of land. They're mostly amateurs. But they are the people who know the ins and outs of gardening, and they will be happy to sit down with any MUFS member and make some hands-on suggestions about gardening. But don't expect them to know the answers to technical questions, like the Latin names of plants. The MUFS are keen to support members who are physically disabled. We're looking at the possibility of providing specially adapted gardening tools on loan to members who can't cope with regular tools. That's not happening yet. But we do have some window boxes as well as larger containers, which we can distribute free of charge to these members, although they will have to provide their own soil and compost themselves. I'm especially proud of the work we've done with the local schools, both grade school level and high schools. The teachers say that they knew the scheme would be of some practical use in science classes like biology. Despite the original hopes of some, the fruit and vegetable plots haven't provided cheaper lunches for their students. But what they didn't anticipate was the change in attitude that the scheme has created amongst their students. They say the students have become much more conscious of their surrounding environment. They want to keep it neat and tidy.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 17 to 20 on page 4. Now listen and answer questions 17 to 20.
Now, a number of local organizations and businesses provide our members with free goods and services. Let me go through some of them. The city hospital, as you might expect, has to provide thousands of meals for its patients. So the manager of its kitchen runs a course for our members on how to use vegetables in a huge variety of dishes. The local government found it had a large glass building, which the Parks Department used to start off flower seeds and young plants during the winter, and they agreed to allow our members to use this free of charge to get their own little seedlings off to a good start. Another thing, the university has agreed that if members send them a sample of their soil, they will do a series of tests on it to indicate what kind of plants will grow best and what types of fertilizer and nutrients would be best to use. And just to make sure our members know what's good for them, a supermarket is offering a series of classes on how to lose weight and stay healthy by having a sensible diet. Now, let's talk about the practicalities.
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 3 on page 5. Section 3. You will hear two psychology students called Katie and Daniel discussing how taking a walk can affect people's creativity and physical well-being. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 26 on page 5. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 26.
Hi, Daniel.
Katie, you look as if you're off somewhere.
Yes, I was just heading out for a walk.
Funny. I was just reading an article about some research that's been done on the effects of walking on creativity.
Sounds interesting.
I've always found walking helped me think, but this article confirms that everybody can benefit.
Oh, tell me more.
OK, but I may even do some more research on it at some point, so don't pinch my idea.
Promise.
Well, in the experiments, the researchers tested participants' creativity by comparing how many ideas they thought of while they were walking, compared to while they were doing other activities.
What, like listening to music?
Nothing like that. But they did analyse the ideas participants came up with when sitting, both outdoors and inside. What I found surprising was that they didn't compare walking to other forms of exercise, like running, for example.
Right. So what was the difference between the experiments?
Well, in each one, the activities were put together in different ways. Several of the experiments specifically focused on the ability of participants to come up with new ideas. Then the final experiment was a control test of sorts.
Oh, right.
In one experiment, participants had to think of unusual uses for 3 everyday objects within a time limit.
OK.
And then there was an experiment with words.
What did they ask them to do?
Compare words in unusual ways. For example, the word sweet. If participants simply said sweet as sugar, that wasn't creative. But an answer like sweet as a cat with honey on its paws was.
OK. I can see why they'd ask them to do that.
Really? I just don't see how the experiment is fair.
Why? Because the conclusions are based only on the researcher's opinion.
I think it's more that anyone who'd studied language would be at an advantage.
OK. Was there an experiment about focused thinking?
Yeah, there was. It aimed to find out if walking helped focused thinking, though I wasn't sure that I agreed with their findings. They decided that walking doesn't help this type of thinking.
What evidence did they have?
Well, that's it. I don't think there was enough evidence to support their conclusions, even if their methods were sound.
Well, I'd certainly hesitate before making such a bold statement.
Still, it's a first step, isn't it? I suppose to move forward with this, they'll need to test other ways people keep fit, like swimming.
That would be useful, but personally, I'd like to know more about the fundamental reason for the effect on people's creativity.
That would be good. Then it could be applied more widely in work, for example.
Again, that's secondary, really.
Before you hear the rest of the discussion, you have some time to look at questions 27 to 30 on page 6. Now listen and answer questions 27 to 30.
But how would you test walking if you wanted to assess its physical benefits?
Well, firstly, I'd like to know more about the benefits of different situations.
What about the effect of footwear?
Hadn't thought of that.
Well, I've read that shoes with thinner soles were found to be better for people's joints. It even made the skeletal structure tougher.
Interesting. Was that because they lost weight?
Not as far as I'm aware. And then there's walking in the mountains.
Walking in the mountains. I think I've read something about that. Doesn't altitude help people regulate their sleep patterns?
It's more that it improves your vision.
It must be those breathtaking views.
Yeah.
And what about the effect that walking has for elderly people?
Better balance by any chance?
More than that, it had a positive effect by helping them maintain their body clock's natural rhythm, both when going to bed and waking up.
Right. And what about the effect of walking long distances?
Well, a person needs to find the balance between their optimum speed and their natural breathing pattern. Once they're synchronised, they can just keep on going for much longer periods than they could before.
I can see how that would work. But anyway...
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 4 on page 7. Section 4. You will hear a lecturer talking about the use of games techniques in business. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40 on page 7. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Today, we are going to look at how the phenomenon known as gamification has really exploded in recent years. So what exactly is gamification? It has been defined as the use of games thinking and mechanics in non-game situations, such as for business. Up to now, its most common function has been marketing. It is extremely popular with big companies, but as we'll see, it also has many other uses. Gamification techniques work on our natural desire for competition. One way they do this is by providing a reward, for example, badges or points, or providing a type of virtual currency. But don't be fooled into thinking the concept is a novel one. Just think of the frequent flyer incentive schemes that were initiated by airlines to try and retain customers. In fact, it's been around for years. However, it has become more prolific with advances in technology. So how is gamification being used? Well, it is seen as an excellent way of obtaining almost instantaneous feedback through common social media sites. However, there are other areas where it is increasingly being used, in particular as a means of trying to convince people through fun activities to alter their behaviour. Another use is in education or training in the workplace, especially when it is just not feasible to train people on the real thing. Good examples of this are the aircraft simulators used by pilots or the urban simulators used by town planners. So let's look at a few examples of the successful implementation of gamification. One perhaps surprising use of gamification has been in official campaigns by governments and authorities who have quickly seen its potential. In Australia, the government developed a smartphone app called My Fit Buddy, whose aim was to help people get off the sofa and exercise. The app provided plenty of motivational content to ensure people got the encouragement they needed to increase their levels of activity. Overseas in one city, instead of just punishing the drivers caught driving too fast, a local authority conducted a trial where they rewarded good drivers with free entries into a draw. The trial was so successful that it resulted in a 22% reduction in speeding. Gamification is also playing its part in helping people make healthy choices. In an attempt to get commuters to walk instead of using the escalators in an underground station, the staircase next to it was transformed into a piano. It had a touchpad underneath which played notes as people stepped on it. When it was in use, almost everyone opted to use the stairs instead of the escalator. Another example is a medical research company in Australia. They realised the potential of gamification to help the elderly recover much more quickly from accidents. When the elderly fall, the most common injury is not to the arm or the leg, but to the hand. So they took an already popular computer game which involved people smashing fruit and adapted it so patients could practice their fine motor skills in a fun way. Now, there are a number of things to consider when using gamification. First of all, there is no way it can work unless it is fun. In fact, without that element, it could have the complete opposite effect on the consumer. In addition, as companies are often obtaining a lot more personal information and data on their customers this way, they should always be mindful of their legal obligations in terms of legislation relating to privacy. So now, it's over to you to think of other examples of gamification that you might have come across.
That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers. That is the end of the listening test. You now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the listening answer sheet. You have 2 minutes left. You have 1 minute left. Please stop writing and wait for your question booklet to be collected.